So we define, or I define sales basically as people interacting with people, as opposed to marketing, which is people interacting with stuff, right? And so I sort of like to make that delineation sort of up front because marketing is being done for the benefit of sales to achieve commercial goals of the organization. And typically the goals of the organization are commercial and revenue based in nature, right? We have to hit a milestone. We have to get another round of funding. Essentially, we need to be profitable. So the goal of demand generation is to really fill this marketing funnel with leads to accelerate sales effectiveness. And so as we sort of move from the top of funnel through the bottom of funnel, we go from sort of unnamed suspects to MQLs typically in our marketing work. And then beyond that into sort of sales qualified leads as they get handed off to the sales team. It's way easier to close new business when you've got good leads, and cold outreach typically is pretty expensive and increasingly ineffective. And so people essentially, renting email lists, doing cold calling and stuff like that. Really, since COVID, we've seen like a big sort of decrease in terms of the effectiveness of kind of traditional sales, outbound sales approaches. So there are suspects on LinkedIn, for example, but they're not going to take a call from an unknown number. They work from home. It's their cell phone. It's not a work phone anymore. If you're like me, you probably get 20 to 30 cold emails a day from people trying to sell you stuff, essentially that I just sort of routinely delete. And that's increasingly automated and sort of roboticized and just very, very spammy. And so really most people are really only interested in talking with sales after they are sort of aware of the offering and interested in learning more about it. So at the crux of that is that no customers really want to talk to you until they understand that you can solve their problems. And so contacts, as opposed to suspects, are people that have searched you out and are aware of your company. We convert contacts on a website when they download something or then they stop by your booth at a conference. Essentially, people are exchanging their personal information. They've opted in. They're aware of the company. And essentially they are self-educated, right? They're seeking something out, and they've given you permission to contact them. They're going to be much, much more likely to respond once they're sort of opted in. Once they've opted themselves in is probably the most important part of that. So marketing qualified leads essentially are going to be very responsive to sort of a sales interaction because they are at the point in the buyer's journey where they have questions. And they would benefit from having a real discussion with somebody that's knowledgeable, that can basically help them make a buying decision. And so we define marketing qualified leads as basically having met this agreed upon criteria, which is typically based on a combination of online activities and demographic information. So these people start out as contacts. So they've come to our website, essentially, they've self-identified, and then we assign points to them using quantitative lead scoring based on customer fit. And that typically is a combination of demographic information and online activities. And then when a contact becomes an MQL, then they're typically passed on to the sales team. So they're warmed up and really ready to go. So inbound marketing, this approach that we use, it is based around this sort of high value scientific content that creates awareness and generates demand. And so a little, Kevin Costner, 90s cliche here in terms of, if we build it, they will come. But mechanistically, what we're talking about is creating meaningful content on our website, promoting it in all of the places that our suspects tend to traffic, and then making them aware of it, essentially through a little bit of sort of outbound promotion, drawing them into the website, they're going to convert, and ultimately then they're going to become new leads and get into our pipeline. So the first thing that we would do is build out content that adds value for our particular customer segment. So there is absolutely a strategic sort of segmentation, targeting, positioning exercise here, right? In order to identify which segment we want to go after, we have to identify essentially who they are demographically, right? What problems they're trying to solve, as well as ultimately how we can solve that. So we create content that varies in type, length, and complexity depending on the different funnel stages. So as people essentially become aware of us, top of funnel, we seek to educate them in terms of what we can offer them, and really trying to understand and drive home the idea that we understand what their pain points are and we can help solve them. And helping to solve them then is sort of inspirational, right? They can do better essentially, and we can resolve these problems with them in a meaningful and differentiated way. And then because they're scientists and they've been trained to be skeptics, unless there's data that sort of supports it, right? We have to reassure them bottom of funnel that this product, that this service is going to do what we say it's going to do. And so across the funnel, you'll see it basically starts out as really short sort of content, search ads and display ads. There's GIFs, there's emails, there's blogs, there's animations. Sort of mid funnel here, we're talking about animations, explainer videos, landing pages, potentially conference events and webinars. And then towards sort of the bottom, then the content tends to get longer and more technical. Application pages, case studies, application notes, tech notes, product pages, technology pages, white papers and product pages sort of at the bottom of the funnel here, where there's more and more data. The material is sort of longer and more technical in nature, right? As we sort of move people down this funnel. So once we create that content, we promote it in all the places that your suspects naturally come across it. So you can imagine that this is not a hunting expedition, but a fishing trip, right? And we're going to put the appropriately designed bait in the places essentially where the fish are going to go, and they're going to stumble across it essentially, and that's going to bring them in. And then, like I said, we use online forms to capture contact information, permission to contact these people. We use HubSpot as a CRM or a HubSpot agency. There are certainly other marketing automation platforms and CRMs that one can use for that sort of mechanistic step. So once a new contact converts, then we use marketing automation in order to serve up more content and nurture them up to MQL status. So they come into the website, they might download a case study, they become a new content. 3 or 4 days later, we might send them an email essentially, hey, you were interested in that. Would you be interested in seeing a poster or watching a talk or checking out an infographic or something like that, basically nurturing with relevant contact. If they click on that email and they open it, they're going to increase their lead score. And we can do this sort of multiple times as we feed people, like I said, content of increasingly sort of technical levels essentially and moving them down that funnel again from inspiration to reassurance. So this is based on quantitative lead scoring, and this is something that we use and others use, but this is how we assess sort of MQL status in a quantitative way. So we'll create a scoring criteria, like a game, I'll call it, where the goal is 100 points. And when a customer reaches 100 points, essentially, via a combination of their demographic information that you see here in black, and then some of their online activities that you see here in green, then we'll promote them to MQL status and typically send them over to the sales team. So here you can see that we're assigning more points to people with higher level titles, for example, than people that have lower level titles. We might assign more points to people that have MDs, JDs, and MBAs because they tend to be executive positions. People with advanced graduate degrees, for example, might be better than people that don't have them. The online activity that you can see, if they contact us or quote request form, they'll move to the top. If they download an asset or if they subscribe, we'll give them additional points. Every time that they view a page on our website, open an email, or click on something, we'll attribute sort of more points to that kind of along the way. We'll also use negative points in order to weed out competitors, in order to identify people, for example, that haven't been on our website recently. If people have unsubscribed and they no longer want to hear from us, for example, if they're subscribing with their Gmail instead of like a .com sort of commercial email, then we'll lower the point list essentially. So it's a dynamic score that occurs over time. We can also adjust it. So we're not married to this 100-point game threshold idea. But depending on how many sales reps you have and what your close rate is and how those calls are going, we can increase or decrease that threshold to either give more leads to your reps faster, essentially, so that your sales team is busy all the time, right? And they're handling these sort of warm leads instead of doing cold outreach and prospect. But then if the sales team is like, if we're closing everything, for example, like if every single call that they have is a close, it could be that we have too many points in the game as well, and we might want to lower that as well. So again, if the close rate is low, if people aren't interested, then we can increase the threshold. If people seem to be overqualified, for example, and we're showing up late to the game and they wish they would have heard from us a week or two or a month ago or something like that, then we can lower that threshold and accelerate that sort of marketing to sales transition. But again, we use promotional channels to drive website traffic. And so that's basically going to be your socials, your emails, and stuff like that. We use predominantly application pages and case studies tend to be the highest converting sort of things in terms of the mid-funnel type stuff, where we're capturing that lead and we're sort of providing that inspiration And then technology and product pages tend to show buying intent. And so as people move from the applications, now they want to know how it works, and now they want to know about your product and how much does it cost. Those tend to be sort of buying signs. And we could typically kick those over then using automation, either to a quote request or scheduling a meeting or even an online purchase, depending on whether or not you guys are using e-commerce and if that fits your sort of mechanism of sale. So we tend to take this sort of phased approach to inbound marketing implementation, right? So these funnels do take some time to sort of build up in terms of all the content that you're going to have and some of the digital infrastructure that we do. So phase one is really it's developing that initial content. It's creating the sort of lead funnel setup. It's beginning to drive traffic and driving these sort of initial campaigns. What you'll see here in the lines is sort of a cost per lead, your SEO value, and then the number of leads over time. SEO tends to be something that is very worthwhile, but it also takes a while. You'll see some immediate gains typically in the front end of it, but then it takes a while to kind of get organically to the top. As we optimize these ads and these pages over time, in terms of the landing pages, optimizing those for conversions, and that could be more or less content or changing the format, for example, or having dynamic text kind of appear. And we align those sort of better and better with the ads and sort of social media type stuff, then we tend to drive more clicks to the pages that convert at higher rates. And then we start to see those sort of SEO gains. What you'll see is a decrease in cost per lead. So we're moving from sort of marketing efficacy to marketing efficiency, right? And then typically our phase three is kind of ramp up. So as things are pretty dialed in, then typically there's an inflection point where we can start spending more money, basically just turning up the volume on ad spend in order to increase the amount of traffic that you would see, again, coming to your pages that are now fully optimized. And so you'll see a huge, typically like an inflection point in terms of the number of leads as the cost per lead continues to go down.